and when I realised it was, you know, that real, I went cold, actually. I don't know if people can identify with that. People have experienced a similar thing, is that you shut down right away.
Let's go back to 1985. Clapton is on tour in Italy and meets an Italian actress, model and presenter, Lory del Santo. At the time, Clapton was still married to Pattie Boyd, the woman who inspired the song Layla around 15 years prior. Eric and Pattie had an affair while she was still married to George Harrison. Pattie and George got divorced, and subsequently Eric and Pattie got married. Clapton then had an affair with Del Santo, resulting in the birth of a son, Conor. And this is what would end Eric and Pattie's marriage. Side note, George Harrison and Lory del Santo would also have their own affair a bit later on, but we're not going to get into that now. Clapton would later say, "Conor was the first thing that happened in my life to touch me deeply, telling me it was time to grow up." And grow up he did. Clapton described his bond with Conor as the most profound relationship he had ever experienced up to that point in his life, and he credits his son as a driving force behind his decision to achieve and maintain sobriety. Although he had overcome his heroin addiction by the late 70s, he continued to struggle with heavy use of other substances, including cocaine and alcohol. Conor's birth in 1986 became the pivotal moment that motivated Clapton to get clean and remain sober. Clapton writes in his 2007 memoir, Clapton the Autobiography, "I really did it for Conor because I thought no matter what kind of human being I was, I couldn't stand being around him like that. I couldn't bear the idea that as he experienced enough of life to form a picture of me, it would be a picture of the man I was then." On the morning of March 20th, 1991, Conor was playing in the New York City apartment that Clapton shared with Del Santo. Now, Clapton was staying at a nearby hotel, and he was preparing to pick Conor up for a planned father-son lunch and a visit to Central Park Zoo when he received a dreadful phone call. Lory was on the other side of the phone, hysterical. Clapton recalled feeling numb and immediately shutting down upon hearing this devastating news. Tragically, Conor accidentally fell to his death from the 53rd floor through a window that had been left open after janitorial work in the apartment. In disbelief, Clapton rushed from his hotel to the apartment building, where he was met with a scene of ambulances, fire engines, and paramedics. Inside, as emergency responders filled the apartment, Clapton felt a surreal detachment. "It felt like I had walked into someone else's life," he told presenter Sue Lory around a year later, "and I still feel like that." They flew their son back to England to be laid to rest at St Mary Magdalene Church in Ripley, Surrey. This is Eric Clapton's hometown. Conor's funeral took place just 2 days before Clapton's 46th birthday. Among the mourners was Phil Collins, and Prince Charles sent a letter of condolence. Now, Clapton had been sober for just 3 weeks when Conor passed away, and you'd think with a tragedy like this, it would be easy for someone to relapse, but not for Clapton. In fact, Clapton credits the tragedy with giving him the resolve to stay committed to his sobriety rather than relapsing. Struggling with profound grief, he spent the months following his son's death in solitude, dividing his time between England and Argentina. There, he attended sobriety meetings and sought comfort through his guitar and songwriting. As he thought about his son, the melody of Jimmy Cliff's Many Rivers to Cross came to mind. 2 songs born from this period directly reflect his loss. Circus Left Town recounts a visit to the circus with Conor the night before his death, while Tears in Heaven poignantly explores the hope of reuniting with loved ones in the afterlife. In a later interview with ABC, Clapton said, "I almost subconsciously used music for myself as a healing agent. And lo and behold, it worked. I've got a great deal of happiness and a great deal of healing from music." The tragedy also motivated Clapton to take a more active role in his daughter Ruth's life as well. Born years before Conor, Ruth Kelly Clapton is Clapton's only child with Yvonne Kelly, a recording studio manager from Montserrat. Now, when Clapton first started developing Tears in Heaven, it was of course an intensely personal song, and it was never intended to be released to the public. However, this changed when he was approached by US director Lily Finney Sanok. She offered Clapton the opportunity to write a song for an upcoming action film called Rush. When Clapton initially met Zanuck, he played a few chords of the Jimmy Cliff melody that had been lingering around in his mind, along with some lyrics he'd written. Now, the director immediately felt the poignancy of the song, given Clapton's tragedy not long before, and she liked the song, but she wasn't sure if it would fit with an action movie. But, despite that, they proceeded anyway. At that time, Clapton had written only one verse. Would you hold my hand if I saw you in heaven? Would you help me stand? If I saw you in heaven, I'll find my way through night and day, 'cause I know I just can't stay here in heaven. From there, Clapton sought the help from Will Jennings to write additional verses and a bridge. They had already written Help Me Up together, another song that appears in the film. Jennings, who initially thought the song might be too maudlin to become a hit, was an accomplished movie lyricist, having penned Up Where We Belong from An Officer and a Gentleman and My Heart Will Go On from Titanic. Now, from the beginning, Jennings saw that this was an incredibly personal song. And initially he urged Clapton to finish it himself, but Clapton was struggling and really needed help from Jennings, so Jennings eventually caved in. He agreed to help Clapton, he wrote some additional verses, and he helped Clapton shape the overall message of the song. Jennings later said he was really moved, that he had wanted me to work on it and tried to do the best I could. The potential success of the song hadn't even crossed Jennings' mind. I was so involved in the sensitivity of the subject, and I didn't even think about that. He said, I'm passionate about all the songs I write, but it was just in another place entirely, another category. Recorded at Village Recorders in Santa Monica, California, Clapton laid down the acoustic song. Tears in Heaven was a challenging song to record, and Clapton, who sang and played guitar and dobro on the track, had to do multiple takes for producer Russ Teitelman. For that version of the song, Clapton was joined by an array of musicians, adding synthesizer, pedal steel guitar, bass, Celtic harp, percussion, and a drum machine. Now, the song was released as a single on January 8th, 1992, a week before the Rush soundtrack. Tears in Heaven immediately soared to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, and by the end of the year, it had sold more than 3 million copies in the US alone. The song's popularity was solidified when Clapton performed it for the first time in a memorable MTV Unplugged concert, 10 months after his son's death. Performing before a small audience at Bray Studios in Berkshire, Clapton poured all his sadness into the song, delivering a haunting acoustic version. The resulting MTV Unplugged album went on to sell 26 million copies worldwide, and Tears in Heaven became Clapton's top-selling solo single. And above all else, for Clapton, the song seemed to ask an important question. Talking to Mojo in 2005, he said, I have a belief in a higher power, but I don't really know whether... Most of those old religious things say, see you over there, and you think, really? How do you know? And the song asked that question, and I'm always wondering whether, very quietly, we meet people again. Now, I mentioned the song Layla earlier in this video. That was a song inspired by a really weird love triangle between Clapton, Pattie Boyd, and George Harrison. There's a fascinating story behind that song, and luckily for you, I've made an entire video about it. Click over there and watch it next.